Managing finances can be a real headache. Just the other day, I realised I was being charged monthly for subscriptions I wasn't even using anymore. If that sounds like you too, then today's sponsor, Rocket Money, is here to help. Rocket Money is the personal finance app that helps you cancel subscriptions, lower bills, and manage your money better. Since discovering Rocket Money, I've been using the app to effortlessly manage my subscriptions. Rocket Money identifies and puts an end to any unwanted recurring charges, and with just a few taps, you can easily cancel them without the hassle of dealing with customer service calls. I'm also using Rocket Money to set custom budgets for myself and help me reach my financial goals. Their app automatically monitors your spending habits across various categories and sends you notifications when you've exceeded your limits. Rocket Money's helped save its customers up to $740 a year, with over $500 million in cancelled subscriptions. To save more and spend less, join the over 5 million members using Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lazymasquerade or click my link in the description to get started for free. You can also unlock even more features with premium. That's rocketmoney.com/lazymasquerade to get started for free. I'm sure for many of you, video games were a big part of your childhood, and I bet you can remember one or two old school classics that got you hooked on the medium. I grew up in the 90s playing Super Mario 64 and Crash Bandicoot from the comfort of my own home, and occasionally still boot up the old consoles for a nostalgic night in with the boys. But if you were young in the mid-1980s, you'd likely have spent more time playing games in the arcade. Retro classics like Pac-Man, Double Dragon, Donkey Kong, and who could forget 1985's Bally Senti Minigolf. I appreciate it's a bit of a deep cut, but allow me to set the scene. You're in a dark, empty arcade, staring into a bright, pixelated screen, and while rummaging through your pocket for a few coins, you see this. Following the example of milk cartons and PSAs, in the 1980s, the faces of missing children sometimes appeared on arcade machines. The two most famous examples are these boys, Taj Allen Merriman and Stephen Philip Curtis, who both featured on Bally Senti Minigolf. Their faces would appear as the machine cycled through different displays, from the title screen, to gameplay footage, to the high scores, and then, almost like a jump scare, to this. Though it does look like something ripped from an analog horror series, I can assure you that this static screen really was used, and the youths shown really had gone missing. Due to the digitization, the faces have an almost uncanny quality to them. That, and the sheer unexpectedness of seeing a missing persons poster pop up on your arcade machine, was enough to burn these photos into many developing brains. After all, the vast majority of people who came across these images were kids themselves. Over on the Atari Age forum, user Thunderfist was able to shed some light on what became of one of these boys. Years ago, I remember seeing a mini-golf arcade game in a gas station near me. I wasn't able to play it, but I remember watching the demo and seeing the screen with two missing boys pop up. That was the only time I'd seen that done in an arcade game, although I have read suggestions that other Bally Senti games, perhaps Gimme a Break being one of them, also did this. I always wondered what became of the two boys in minigolf, and decided to look into their cases. Downloading and playing set 2 of minigolf in MAME, I took a screenshot of that particular screen, and took down the information on the two boys. Taj Allen Merriman's fate was easily found. It seems his was a family abduction, and he was found safe around July 12, 1985 in Georgia. That was the date the mother was arrested for the abduction, according to the Beaver County Times. I haven't been able to find anything on the other boy though. Searching through old online resources, it does seem that Taj was found. But, as Thunderfist stated in his post, there's no information online about Stephen. Several other forum users were able to locate a Stephen P. Curtis, living close to Hoquiam, where the poster said he had last been seen, but that finding's far from official. It's not like Stephen Curtis is a particularly unique name after all. As far as I'm concerned, Stephen's whereabouts and well-being remain inconclusive. Taj and Stephen weren't the only lost children to appear in these chilling arcade ads though. Other grainy faces that appeared on Bally Senti cabinets included Melinda Marie Smith, April Rose Yates, Daniel Godfrey Owens, Charles Brandon Morris, and likely numerous others that haven't been brought up on the internet yet. And of all of them, Taj is the only one confirmed to have been found. The implementation of these digitized photos was an experiment by Senti Technologies to see whether such a strategy could aid police investigations. But, as you've heard, the experiment's success was limited, and the practice didn't last. Fellow YouTuber Pixels After Dark was able to find a playable ROM of the minigolf arcade game online and demonstrated how the feature worked. The faces of these lost sprogs didn't appear by default, but on the dip switch menu, the machine's owner would have been able to activate the Display Kids option and could manually choose to mark them as located or not. Eerily, as far as we know, that located feature was only ever used for one of the missing youngsters, Taj. As for the others, well, in Pixels After Dark's words, we can only hope that they got the good ending too. Many of these old Bally Senti arcade cabinets still exist today, in private collections, vintage bars, and retro arcades, and in their code hide the relics of a failed experiment. The only known photos of lost children, immortalized in a video game. Their faces frozen in time. Their fates a mystery. Their stories untold. Depending on how you look at it, social media could be considered a blessing or a curse. Though most of us use it to connect with others, share information, and generally kill a few spare minutes, not everyone engages with it that way. For the lonely, it's a cold comfort. For the terminally online, an addiction. And for the most depraved among us, a hunting ground. Over 2 months in 2017, 8 women, aged between 15 and 26, disappeared from various prefectures in and around Tokyo, Japan. And they all had something in common. Before vanishing, they'd all been in contact with a mysterious Twitter account, one ominously named Hanging Pro. Unbeknownst to his friends and neighbours, Takahiro Shiraishi wasn't the polite, gentle, and docile young man that he portrayed himself to be. Though outwardly he acted the right way, said the right things, and stayed out of trouble, in reality, he was a hollow shell of a human being, one incapable of empathy. He had friends, he tried hard at school, he played sports and indulged in hobbies, but there was nothing that truly interested him. Well, aside from one thing. At some point in his youth, he had developed a morbid fascination with ropes. His sister had once walked into his bedroom when they were young and found Takahiro and a friend playing the choking game, tugging on makeshift nooses that they had wrapped around each other's necks till they were blue in the face. It was an interest that he had carried with him into adulthood. An average student with average grades, Takahiro would go on to graduate from high school, but opted not to enroll at university. Instead, he relocated to Tokyo and got a job in Shinjuku's Kabukicho, a seedy entertainment district notorious for its red lights. His job there was simple: to lure attractive, young women into certain bars and convince them to become escorts. It was a job that required charm rather than brainpower. But there was just one problem with that. Takahiro was scared of women. Their mere presence made him sweat and stutter. As such, he found a workaround. Rather than approaching women face to face like most scouts, he instead scoured social media for the beautiful unemployed and told them how much money they could make doing so-called night work. It was a strategy that proved surprisingly effective. Even among the other workers in Kabukicho though, Takahiro had developed a reputation and earned himself the nickname, the Creepy Scout. But they didn't just call him creepy because of how he talked or the way he acted, but also because of his eyes. More specifically, because of his vacant, lifeless stare. Those who spoke with him said that whenever they looked into Takahiro's eyes, it was like he wasn't there. Well, everyone soon learned that Takahiro's eyes weren't the creepiest thing about him. His chat history confirmed that he had been trying to lure high schoolers into becoming escorts. People began posting his picture online, along with the caption, "Watch out for this guy," which in turn led to Takahiro being arrested and given a 14-month suspended sentence in 2017. Now jobless, Takahiro relocated to nearby Zama, where he rented a squalid one-room apartment for $250 a month. Broke, loveless, and isolated, he chose not to seek out new employment. Instead, he continued to spend most of his time online, scouting out young women. This time, for an altogether different purpose. Using a myriad of Twitter accounts, including the aforementioned Hanging Pro, Takahiro targeted young, lonely females that he came across on the internet, sometimes posing as a guru skilled at helping other people end their own existence, other times playing the part of a miserable man looking for someone to end himself with. His goal, at first, was to find a sugar mama, someone who could not only satisfy him carnally, but who could support him financially. And given how useless he was at talking with women, he figured that he'd try and play the game of love on easy mode. And by manipulating the lonely, he figured he'd stand a better chance at winning. The first person to agree to meet with Takahiro was 21-year-old Mizuki Miura, a company employee from Atsugi. The pair met in person several times to discuss their mutual unhappiness. According to their chat history, Takahiro offered to let Mizuki live with him in exchange for a 500,000 yen down payment on rent. She accepted and moved in with him that August. To begin with, their cohabitation went smoothly. But when Mizuki began getting close to another guy named Shogo Nishinaka, she suddenly disappeared and became unreachable by both phone and social media. The same evening that Mizuki sent her final ever message, an anonymous post appeared on the message board 2chan. Urgent. How to get rid of 50 kilograms of meat. Due to circumstances, I've got 50 kilograms of meat. But what can I do to get rid of it? I'm not a big meat eater, so I want to dispose of it as soon as possible. After not hearing from Mizuki in 5 days, her new male friend, Shogo, went to Takehiro's apartment looking for her. And after stepping inside, he too was never heard from again. Jealous that Mizuki was falling for this Shogo guy, Takahiro confronted her on August 23rd. When Mizuki said that she didn't have any romantic feelings for Takahiro and that she saw him as more of a friend, the incel snapped. In a blind rage, he incapacitated her, SA'd her, and, not wanting her to go to the authorities, strangled the life out of her. And when Shogo came sniffing around, he butchered him. It was too late to turn back now, and so Takahiro decided that if women wouldn't give him what he wanted, he'd take it. On the same Twitter accounts, Takahiro used carefully thought out hashtags to fish for potential targets, preying on the desperate and downtrodden. And given how many people in Japan are overworked and isolated, it wasn't long before he started getting bites. His Twitter bio read, "I want to help people who are really in pain. Please DM me anytime." Through those DMs, Takahiro would build a rapport with those who contacted him. He would slowly break them down and earn their trust by promising to end his own existence alongside them. He'd also tell them not to discuss their private chats with anyone, of course. That was a deal breaker. Numerous other people are known to have vanished after agreeing to meet with Takahiro. Kureha Ishihara, a high school freshman. Natsumi Kubo, a senior. Hinako Sarashina, a university student. Kazumi Maruyama, a convenience store worker. Akari Suda, a prospective manga artist. And Hitomi Fujima, a mother and housewife. After luring his victims back to his house of horrors, Takahiro would tranquilize them, rob them, SA them, and snuff them out using a piece of rope. Many woke up and tried to fight back, but were ultimately unable to overpower him. He dragged each of their bodies into his bathroom, where he sliced them into pieces using kitchen blades, a handsaw, woodwork tools, and a pair of scissors. Most of their meat, as he called it, was hacked off and thrown out with his other garbage. He stored the rest of the remains inside picnic coolers and wooden crates, which he kept inside his flat. Following advice which he had allegedly received on 2chan, Takehiro topped the coolers with cat litter to help mask any foul odours. But what his neighbours thought was the smell of faulty drains was actually the pungent stench of death. Takehiro's ninth and final victim was Aiko Tamura, who disappeared on October 23rd. After not hearing from her for several days, her brother became concerned about Aiko's whereabouts. After gaining access to her Twitter account, he discovered the unsettling messages that Takehiro had been sending her. The brother contacted another woman that Takehiro had messaged, one who had met with him in person. This woman agreed to act as bait in a sting operation. Using her Twitter account, they contacted Takehiro and arranged to meet with him at a nearby station. On Halloween night, 2017, the two met and walked back to his apartment. Upon their arrival, undercover officers stormed the residence and demanded to know where Aiko was. Takehiro pointed to one of the small boxes that filled the living space and coldly stated, "She's in there." The coolers and crates were filled with the heads, arms, and legs of Takehiro's 9 victims, with most of their meat scraped off. A combination of DNA testing, CCTV evidence, and phone data helped the investigators uncover the identities of all 9 victims. Takehiro had taken their lives at a rate of more than 1 per week, and he had no intention of stopping. In fact, he had already met with 4 other women who he was working on, including the decoy who had played a role in the sting. For obvious reasons, the media dubbed Takehiro the Twitter killer. In court, Takehiro didn't deny responsibility for the slayings, and stated, "I'm sorry for having killed some of my victims, the ones with whom I spent a lot of time, and I'd like to apologize to their families. But for the others, I don't really feel a deep sense of regret. If I hadn't been caught, I would regret nothing." In Takehiro's words, he would have continued his spree forever, or at least until he found a woman who would support him financially. His defense tried to spin a different narrative, saying that Takehiro was actually a good Samaritan, one who only wanted to help desperate women pass on with dignity. But Takehiro himself laughed at the absurdity of that story, and admitted, "Not a single one of my victims consented." In response, Judge Naokuni Yano said that Mr. Shirashi had not only taken 9 lives, but had, quote, trampled on the dignity of the dead. And on December 15th, 2020, he sentenced the 30-year-old to death. Even though Takehiro is currently behind bars, he is reportedly still looking for a wife, one who he hopes will bring him things from the outside world. "I know many women are irrationally attracted to serial killers," he told an interviewer. "A few have already been in touch." Takehiro better make it a fast courtship though. After all, he may not have much time left to enjoy married life. In Japan, the date of an inmate's execution is kept secret, even from the convicted and their family, and they're only notified on the morning that they're set to perish. As such, Takehiro will wake up every morning, however many he has left, wondering if that might be the day he loses his life. And when he does, it will, fittingly, be at the end of a rope. During your adventures on the internet, you may have come across the term phrogging. For those of you who haven't, phrogging, as described by dictionary.com, is the act of secretly living in another person's home without their knowledge or permission. It's a concept that gets used a lot in no-sleep stories and creepypastas. But the thing is, phrogging is far from a mere urban myth. There have been hundreds of documented cases of unwanted visitors living in someone's loft, hiding inside their walls, or even sleeping under their bed. The term derives from the phrogs' modus operandi, how they hop from pad to pad, either searching for a place to live or just chasing a sick thrill. Typically, they avoid confrontation, only going so far as to steal the homeowner's food, toiletries, and privacy. But not all phrogs are made equal. Some aren't content living in the shadows forever. Some make the leap into even more depraved acts. The year was 2019, and Brittany and James Campbell were a pair of military newlyweds stationed in Hawaii. With orders to stay on Oahu for the next 2 years, they picked out a family home where they could raise their 2 sons in peace, a modest 2-story house located on a safe Honolulu cul-de-sac. In mid-September that same year, the Campbells left for a week's vacation to the US mainland. Despite living in an island paradise, the couple were extremely eager to get away for a while, and not just to visit relatives. Unfortunately, Hawaii wasn't the fairy tale that they hoped it would be. Just a few months prior, they had found their garage in a bad state. Someone had snuck inside, opened up all of their storage boxes, and arranged their contents into strange piles. At first, they believed that they had been robbed, but soon realized that no valuables were missing. A thorough search of the rest of the house turned up no further clues, so the Campbells chalked this incident up to some local youths messing around and did their best to forget about it. But Brittany couldn't help but feel that something was off. On multiple nights in the weeks leading up to their trip, she had been awoken by what she thought was the sound of doors slamming, floorboards creaking, and boxes being rummaged through. Every time she went to investigate the source of the noise, she found nothing, but they happened so frequently that they kept her perpetually on edge. Brittany raised her concerns with her husband James, and though he originally believed that she was just being paranoid, he too recalled several weird occurrences from recent months. He had found the front door mysteriously unlocked, personal effects out of place, and the computer's webcam switched on when nobody had been using it. Most worryingly, while home alone one afternoon, James had been playing the piano when he suddenly got a strange feeling. He turned to see the silhouette of a man staring at him through the window, his face obscured by a thin curtain. The figure ran off, and James convinced himself that the man was just a neighbor listening to him play. Still, in combination with all of the other strange happenings, the couple began to feel like they were losing their minds. Thus, they booked their holiday to the mainland. A week away, they thought, would do wonders for their well-being. When the family returned to their home on September 20th, they noticed something suspicious in their front yard. James's bike. Certain that he had left it locked away inside the garage, James told his family to wait in the car while he went inside to investigate. But when he tried to open the front door, he could feel something, or someone, pulling against him on the other side. James managed to pry the door open enough to make a gap. He peered through it, and locked eyes with a man he had never met. One who calmly, yet forcefully stated, "This is not your house." James managed to force his way into his own home, and found that this 20-something-year-old stranger was wearing his clothes. With a sledgehammer in hand, James managed to restrain the intruder, while Brittany contacted the authorities. What they later found inside the home was haunting. Near most every object in every room had been rearranged, with pots and pans piled in neat stacks, James's musical gear laid out in the living room, and their son's bedroom meticulously cleaned. Knives had been carefully placed atop James and Brittany's bed, laid out like tools on a surgeon's operating table. But the most disturbing discoveries were found on the family's laptop. The Frog had left them a video using the webcam. In the footage, he performed a deranged parody of a makeup tutorial. More concerning, however, was a digital diary that the Frog had been keeping, one which contained notes about each family member, detailing their movements and private conversations, confirming that the man truly had been living inside their home for several months, watching them. In a separate file, they found an extremely long document titled The Omnivore Trials, a rehabilitation of rat-like people. In what can only be described as a deranged manifesto, the Frog explained his plan to turn the Campbell family from omnivores into Ezekiels. This included transplanting their hands and removing certain unnecessary organs. Today's trial consisted of trying to use makeup for cosmetic changes. It kind of failed, but I believe there will be progress. It's hard to figure out what to do because I still haven't had a real connection with the consultant. I want to get closer, but I guess we both have a fear of something that we are. I'm easily freaked out by human forms, and they believe I'm a narcissistic human, in a way. I just want them to look perfect. I want them to feel beautiful. I believe that even the way they are is possibly one of the most beautiful creatures I've ever seen, but I'm a weird guy, so I guess that's why. But the trials will be completed. We will all have a base home where we can go if needed, and eventually we'll have other homes and places that we can go to enjoy our lives. The frog used that same laptop to research surgery utensils for sale, and had googled how to perform certain operations. Vials of pills were found inside the living room, and it's believed the frog had gathered these to sedate the family members in preparation for their transformations. A message on James's calendar simply read, "Your rehabilitation starts today. Do as I did. Choose a house. Clean it. Set up all devices." The term Ezekiel's made a little more sense when the authorities arrived to arrest the frog. He was 23-year-old Ezekiel Zayas, and he'd been living in the crawl space above the Campbell's second-floor bathroom. "He wanted to play doctor on us," recalled Brittany. "He wrote about how he could make us into perfect people." Had the Campbell family not gone on vacation when they did, they may well have woken up one night to find themselves in a nightmare scenario. One that doesn't bear thinking about. After his arrest, Ezekiel faced burglary charges and was subsequently released under supervision. However, he was taken into custody again in 2020, this time for vandalizing a Buddhist temple. While incarcerated, Ezekiel demonstrated his willingness to kill by beating and stomping on the head of his 62-year-old cellmate, Pons Grace. This attack was completely unprovoked, and guards were unable to stop him from slaying Pons due to faulty locks on their cell door. Ezekiel pled guilty to the lesser charge of manslaughter and was sentenced to a total of 40 years. Understandably, the Campbells have since left Hawaii and moved into a new home on the mainland. Though, given what they went through, I wonder if they'll ever really feel at home again. A huge thank you to my supporters here on YouTube and over on Patreon. George Lopez, Holly Lyons, ModestBulbasaur, Alana Pons, Asiamina, Azrael Warakai, Chief Cochuaque, Colin Monsma, Connor Louthan, Wewzow, Farewelltattoosjaxfl, Gina Valera, Hamish, Biluck, Kevin Villa, Mistyblue Longie, Monica Mendoza, Biluck, SmilinJack, Terry Ford, TNS Mum, LJB, Nicole Beshia, Hamish K, Ellen Dolloff, Itai Alon, Nefis 1988, and Lydia Ciummo. Thank you so much for your continued support.